Okay, another one of the insects that we find very commonly in still water situations and slower flowing weedy streams are damselflies. They're very, very prolific. We find lots of them, and they're of prime interest to the fly angler because the trout see them frequently, and we have lots of opportunities to fish with these. Now, this is an underwater form that we'd be fishing, but they are extremely, extremely effective in situations where the trout are used to eating them. And damselflies, along with a close relative, the dragonflies, are common in still water situations and probably a fly of choice if you were going to imitate an underwater form, as in these nymphs that I've captured this morning. They're extremely prolific, and in many cases in lots of ponds and lakes, there'll be just literally millions of them, and so the fish have an opportunity to feed on them and see them often, and they are very, very interested in these damsels. Damsels have an incomplete life cycle. They go through their growth stages up to about the point where they are now, and they swim to shore and emerge into a winged insect. This gives them, as they swim to shore, and they kind of have a lazy swimming motion, gives the trout quite an opportunity. And times when the damsels are migrating to shore is an excellent time for fishing these insects. As you see here, I think it looks like 4 colors. A very bright olive one, a brown one, more kind of a dark olive, and a reddish brown one. Now, these very likely relate to different species of damselflies. That's not necessarily important to the fly fishermen, but seeing the variety in colors, the most common damselfly that you'll usually have an opportunity as far as a nymph to purchase is usually a bright green or olive one. Fishing damsel nymphs in a still water situation, they're commonly fished with a intermediate or a nymph tip type line so that the fly will stay underwater. You use a slow figure 8 retrieve so that you can imitate this lazy swimming motion. Damselflies, like their cousins the dragonflies, are predatory as nymphs, and they eat other insects. They're going to eat midge larvae and a variety of other small things that they can catch, but they are predatory. The damselflies and their cousins the dragonflies have an incomplete life cycle, which means just like with the stoneflies and the mayflies, they grow through their growth stages, and in this case being predators, they prey on other insects and grow up to a particular size. Most of the damselflies have a 1-year life cycle. They live for a couple of weeks, fly around their predators as adults as well, and they will mate and deposit eggs back into the lake or stream that they came from. The damselflies, in some cases, can be very, very good dry flies. And we see from some of the colors that we see around this pond, we have some bright blue damselflies, some tan ones, some black ones with blue highlights. There's a lot of things that you can imitate. But in situations where there are good numbers of them, after they've laid their eggs and become spent, they die in the water. The fish quite readily take them as surface flies. So with a damselfly, we can have both some dry fly activity as well as nymph activity. It gives us 2 different things. And when you can catch trout or other species on dry damselflies, it's great fun because they are quite an impressive rise to a large insect. Well, another one of the still water insects that we've captured is called by the Australians Acuta mudeye. Here in the United States, we call it a dragonfly nymph. They're very common in many of our still waters and make quite a delicious, tasty treat for a trout. Just like their cousins, the damselflies, they're predatory, both as a nymph and in the adult stage. But that doesn't really bother a large trout. They think they're very tasty as well. The dragonfly, just like his cousin the damselfly, has an incomplete life cycle. The dragonfly, in many cases being larger, will live up to 3 years underwater before he grows large enough to hatch into a winged adult. The winged adults live for a fairly good length of time, and in some areas of the country the winged adults are called mosquito hawks, as they prey on mosquitoes on the wing. The dragonfly nymphs are, by and large, is the most common element or part of the dragonfly life cycle that we have an opportunity to imitate and fish with for any of the trout species. We fish them as nymphs in many still water lake situations or slow-moving weedy streams. The type of nymph that you'd be fishing would be a fairly weighted nymph, and fishing it with a sink tip or an intermediate line and a interesting retrieve. As these little predators move through the weeds and vegetation underwater, they have almost a jet propulsion system that they can take water in through their mouth and shoot it out through their back end, and they kind of will jet through the water. They can move 8 to 10 inches in one big little speed burst, and then they'll stop and kind of refill their jet engine with some water and speed off again. So when you're fishing with these as a nymph form underwater, it's best to use them with a fast stop type retrieve. So you'll strip them a foot and stop them, and strip them fast again and stop them. And this is what a startled dragonfly nymph does, and quite often trout recognize that action and will prey on them because they see that they're startled and trying to escape. Although their adult form, which is predatory, as I've mentioned, on the wing is a large insect, and they look like they'd make a great opportunity for the fly angler to imitate a big insect, but dragonflies very, very infrequently get on the water. I've probably only seen in the last 30 years 3 or 4 situations where a dragonfly has been on the water and been eaten by a trout. Not really frequently enough that I'm going to carry too many imitations in my fly box.